The Dharma, incomparably profound and exquisite, is rarely met with even in hundreds of thousands of millions of kalpas. We now can see it, hear it, accept and hold it. May we realize the true mind of the Tathagata. We are so incredibly fortunate to have connected with this form of practice, which is one of the very few forms of practice in the world these days that will actually bring us to a deep awakening, assuming we do the practice. And that's always the challenge, that we do the practice, because it's fraught with challenge in the earlier years. And that challenge comes as a result of our attachments. When Harada Shodo had done a number of years of intensive practice at Shofukuji under Yamada Mitra-roshi, he was still frustrated because he had not gotten through his koan, his initial koan. And he finally decided, with Mitra-roshi's permission, to go and camp out in the mountains and do concentrated practice daily, nightly, ongoingly, until he had results. Mitra-roshi said he could do that so long as he came back when he had a kensho. And one day, after a year of that intensive practice, and knowing Harada Roshi, he had this amazing ability to focus and amazing level of commitment to doing the practice for the benefit of all beings. And at a certain point, someone said, as they were coming by, triggered a deep awakening experience for him. He realized, and this is absolutely essential for everyone to know about, he realized that all he had to do was receive. He didn't have to be prepared to defend himself. He didn't have to be prepared to do anything beyond what naturally came forth from his awakened mind state of an appropriate behavior to get into in response. And that's not really an appropriate behavior to get into in response, but rather an appropriate response, because there's no one to get into a behavior. When we simply receive, we naturally flow with circumstances. It is something that everyone can realize. Yes, he was deeply committed, but when you understand his younger years, when he had no interest whatsoever in even becoming a Zen monk, he grew up in a temple and in Nara, Japan, where his father was the priest, and he really, that's the last thing in the world he wanted to do. Fortunately, he had an older brother who was ahead of him in line to carry on the mantle. And his brother, who had, before his father died, actually gone into business. When his father died, he went ahead and took the reins, but he was only half interested. And he had not really had the training that was essential to be fully present with that new position that he had. And he was something of a rambunctious priest. I'm sure Harada Roshi was ordained as a novice when he was about 5 years old. That's about the time it would happen for someone whose family was in a family temple, so that there would be a successor. Interestingly enough, and it was kind of fun to learn this many years ago, actually, in Japan, which is mainly male-driven, that one of the priests in such a temple had no male heirs, so his daughter inherited the temple. She was made a nun, and she inherited the temple. During the Meiji Restoration, which was led up to by a rising challenge to Buddhist temples and just the Buddhist clergy, there had been, as there are periodically with any religion, ups and then a slide down. When a religion is new or has undergone a rebirth, then the teachings are fresh and new, and people are willing to go deep into those teachings and achieve the results that are available if they do that. But as time goes by, the old greed for power takes over, and eventually they get caught in that themselves, and the Dharma really sinks to a very low level. At the time when Hakuin became a teacher, even before that, there were really no real Zen masters other than Dokyo Eitan, who was all by himself in a tiny little, really a cottage, a farmer's cottage, in a remote area of Japan, because he didn't feel the need to be important. And the priests that were in the big temples simply taught commentaries on various sutras or traditional writings. And monks would go around to these temples for these sort of conferences, and Hakuin did as well. That was the mode of practice in those days in Japan. But he was going also to try to find a true teacher, and he didn't find one. The last one of those Dharma meetings that he went to, he just bailed fairly early on and decided simply to go off into a remote part of the temple and do Zazen. He was disenchanted with the level of the understanding of the priest that was giving the talks, and at a certain point just simply bailed. He felt it wasn't worth it. What he wanted to do was far beyond, far deeper than what he felt that temple priest had achieved. And there he found his first kensho, or open to his first kensho is a better way to put it, when early in the morning he heard the boom of the morning bell. In temples in Japan, it's typical, it's traditional, that every morning as the sun begins to rise, as the light begins to change, one of the monks goes out to the bell tower and starts reciting a chant and hitting the bell at certain points in the chant. I've done that myself at Sogenji. Interestingly, it's the Enmejuku Kanogyo, the I think it's called also the 10-verse Kanon Sutra, and the deep understanding at Sogenji is one of compassion. So it would be natural that they would chant the Enmejuku Kanongyo, which is a chant to praise the Bodhisattva of compassion. And when somebody was doing that at that temple, he had a sudden awakening experience. Now, he had achieved that awakening experience through grueling. And I say grueling because it wasn't very effective practice. He was forcing himself to focus. He was forcing himself to search a way that was guaranteed to develop immense stress and pressure. And it did. And eventually he realized that his way of working was not really working. It might have gotten him a small Kensho experience, a small insight into the nature of reality, but it certainly wasn't freeing him. And instead, he got himself sick with a nervous illness. But that's another story. Harada Roshi had somehow discovered a middle way to working. He was able to focus his mind deeply without the stress building. And when I would see him in Zazen, and there is a photograph of him in the hallway here, in the Sanzen room, waiting for the first person to come. And you can see there that he is just deeply immersed in his inner search without any stress. It's a model for all of us to emulate. So he realized that all he had to do was receive. That's a very deep level of awakening. Translated, that means he did not need to defend himself against any confrontations, any encounters, any situations. And he could simply gradually work with ease through life, always continuing to deepen. And this was one of the hallmarks of a great teacher, that they continue to deepen their practice. Roshi Keplo also was remarkable in this continuing of doing practice. There are, unfortunately, in the past, teachers who did not bother to do this. And as a result, their behavior was less than optimal, less than exemplary as a spiritual teacher. But one comes out of that realization that all he needed to do was simply receive whatever came to him, was a level of deep peace. And that also is what we can realize as well. The peace came, the ability to simply receive came because he had worked through the attachments that were inhibiting that ability to live in that way. And that is why early Zazen, early sesshins are so challenging, because as we go deeper, then we begin to bump into where we're caught, which is essential, though not necessarily very comfortable, to allowing ourselves to work with that caught place by tuning into the felt sense and continuing to search, who is it that is feeling this? Who is it that's beyond this? Which is not a way of dissociating. It's not a way of shoving it out of the corner. It's a way of being so fully present with the pain, with the discomfort, with the suffering, even with the anguish of what might come up when we recognize our behavior was less than befitting someone who would prefer to be free and filled with compassion and wisdom. We're all filled with compassion and wisdom, but it takes seeing where we're caught and working with it to release that caughtness, for that compassion and wisdom to be increasingly revealed and realized, function in our daily life. But it is something that everyone can do, and many people over the millennia have been able to do that. Every morning when we chant the lineage chants, those are the names of the people that have gone before us, theoretically in direct line, teacher to student, to student, to student, to student, always dependent on a deep awakening experience. It is said that if a teacher has half a student that has twice the level of awakening that they have, that is what they want. We don't realize how deeply we can go. We don't realize the liberty we can experience, the freedom from being caught in any kind of situation, that we are able, with enough insight, with enough work at releasing the caught places, to experience in an ongoing way. This is the promise of Zazen. Unfortunately, many people give up with either a shallow kensho or even no kensho when things get difficult and challenging. But be stubborn. Be stubborn. The alternative to coming to a deep awakening is to fall back into the sea of samsara, as it's called. The experience, ongoing experience of being caught between pleasure and pain. And even pleasure is a challenge because there's always the background noise, how long is this going to last? And eventually it does fade. And when we go scrambling after it, it's going to be very painful because it will continue to disappear. But letting go of the need for it to be is a way to sink back into it, ironically. The practice is incredible. The practice is liberating to the degree we put our efforts into it. And we don't seek for liberation. We seek to deepen and understand and realize our true nature. To see through the facade we've adopted through conditioning and through experiences that we have come up with inner comments on. And unfortunately, when we're kids and we have negative experiences and conclude that there's something wrong with us, then that gets reinforced as we grow older and have more experiences. And those are the things that we need to let go of in order to have lasting peace, truly profound peace. As I was with Roshi Kapleau for many decades, I watched him encounter these stuck places and work with them and become free of them and gradually become more let go, more humble, more generous, more kind, more wise. He was an incredibly wise teacher. Harada Roshi has really given himself, as Kapleau Roshi did as well, to working deeply on himself, both as inspiration to his students, in the case of Harada Roshi in particular, and also to continue deepening himself so that he would become as freely able to truly guide people toward their own liberation. It's simple, it's not easy, but it is within everyone's grasp to reach that, if we are willing to do the work. And the practice, particularly the Susokan, the extended out breath, coupled with the yearning to return to what we once knew intimately and were immersed in and were free is an incredibly powerful way to practice. And when we add koans to it, which are really meant to help us expand our awareness and deepen our understanding, so much the better, particularly the way we work with them in the Rinzai sect. Everything is there to make it as optimal as possible for anyone who is deeply interested in truly becoming free, especially truly becoming free for the benefit of all beings, which is one of the things that does come up for us as we go more deeply into our practice. Often when we begin practice, it's a more self-centered goal. I want to quit hurting. But as we go more deeply into our practice and understand through experience that all beings are suffering just as we are, and we want to free all of them. This is the Bodhisattva vow. And the urge to fulfill that vow is fundamental to our practice. So if you're relatively new to practice and really are more interested in freeing yourself, not to worry. Keep going, and you will realize you are one with all beings eventually, and that you don't want anybody to suffer. You don't want anybody to be in pain. And you will work for the benefit of all beings, not just for yourself. Deep, profound, ongoing peace, regardless of whatever the external situation is. Ease in moving through life. Again, no matter what the external situation provides, is a product of ongoing, deepening Zazen. And on the seventh day of Sesshin, we've all reached a certain level in that direction. And the most important thing for all of us, for the whole universe, for every hurting being, human or otherwise, is it most important that we continue to deepen our practice. This is very short today, but there's no point in dragging it on. The message is clear, hopefully, and there's nothing more to say about it. What's important is to really continue the deep work we've been doing during Sesshin to bring it to life ever increasingly in our own lives. And dedicated practice will naturally provide that. It will take time. It's important to be patient. It's very important to be patient. It's important to persist. To be stubborn. It's all up to each one of us, but we can do it. Don't doubt that for a minute. You are worthy as much as Siddhartha Gautama, who became the Buddha, the awakened one, was. We are all little Buddha seeds, yearning to sprout and to become fully awakened. Thank you for listening. We'll stop now and recite the 4 vows.